What's up everyone, Eric Rossi, the guy with the eye here. I wanted to talk about Sony's future in a way and how they're going to treat their sensors and how they're going to keep everything in-house and not outsource it to other companies. The story becomes a big deal because it's Sony taking a step up for themselves and saying, we make the most sensors pretty much in the entire market. We are going to keep it for ourselves. And while disappointed because I still do own a Nikon D750, I made that Canon switch video, whatever, but this explains a lot why Nikon hasn't made a lot of cameras because they rely heavily on Sony sensors. I'll cover all that in a second. There was an interview that Imaging Resource actually did. They traveled over and they were talking with Kenji Tanaka and Yohiro Asai. Hopefully I said that right, probably not. And they were asking a lot of questions and talking about the future and everything. The article was removed from Imaging Resources' site for some reason. I'm not 100% sure why, but it is webcast, so I'm going to post it down in the description below if you really want to read everything full in depth. And they have a discussion on the future of Sony and why they're choosing to do all this kind of stuff and how they're going. So if you want to read this full in depth, and as long as it's up, go ahead and do it. But Sony Alpha kind of recovered a little bit and they outlined the biggest components in this, and that's what I want to talk about. But before I want to go into this, I found an article from 2015 on DP Review where Sony owned an estimated 40.2% of the imaging sensor market, and they worked with Apple back then and a couple of, they were in a lot of stuff. They owned almost half the market, but that was back in 2015. 2015 is when they really started to gain their ground. They were outsourcing a ton of their sensors, especially to Nikon, and that's the big deal. Now, I don't have the exact numbers up to 2017, but now they should easily be over 50%, and I'm sure if you want to do a little more research, you can go into that. But just to even show you more, Sony imaging sensors in the iPhone 7, iPhone 7 Plus. There's even some in the Google Pixel, which are pretty much the two most popular phones out right now. And I find this being a big deal. So one of the big things that was asked and that was brought up was that they're not going to be sharing their sensors. They're going to keep all the best sensors for themselves, especially for full frame. And this is where Nikon excelled, and that's why they did very well in low light, except they've been a little bit behind on things, but it really makes sense. They also talked about going into full frame and what the future is, and that they really want to take the full frame market in doing that as well. They still don't have that a ton on the still side of things. They're still mainly on the video. So they need that blend if they want to really do a lot more. But Sony cameras in low light, I reviewed the A7S, A7S II, or whichever one it was. I think I did the A7S and the A7S II. I shot something last January, and I shot video at 10,000 ISO, which essentially just looked like it was a raw video, and it looked very, very well. So they're focusing on that. But then the other thing that they're saying they're going to doing is they're focusing on 3 essential factors. And I think this is what we're going to see a lot. One of them being resolution. They have the high 40 megapixel cameras. Sensitivity. So you're going to get even better low light, so they say. And they want to do it for speed. So frames per second, burst per second, buffer, all that kind of stuff, which they kind of are killing in the market right now anyway. The other thing that they want to do, they already really have, right under Canon's dual pixel AF, they have the best focusing system out there. But like they said, they want to concentrate on full frame. But as time has also shown, technology can change that kind of thinking, and I think that Sony can do it. And I know a lot of people have made, a couple of Nikon future updates that mirrorless is a fad, and that's just not true. You're just unfortunately ill-informed with how everything out there. And someone said if I reviewed more Fuji or Olympus stuff that I would be a lot more, I would get a lot more subs and more views, and that's actually not true. Sony cameras are one of the most searched things on YouTube, so keep that in mind for things as well. People are buying them. That's why I used to invest in them. But they're more technology, so they want to show you the new camera. And I think they're going to talk, and I think this was in regards to the new like A9 or whatever would be coming out. But this is a big deal. They're going to keep the sensors for themselves. Nikon's kind of screwed. That's why they haven't come out with anything. And this is a year old at this point, so I really just kind of want to talk about this. But this just shows you what sensors or who made them are in Nikon cameras. So if you notice, it's mainly Sony for the most part. It is funny to note though, the D700 full frame camera, 12 megapixels, is one of my most favorite cameras of all time. Low light beast in my opinion, great speed and everything, was made by Nikon. Same kind of sensor they put into the DF as well. But as you see, D750 is Sony, D800 Sony, and you go down the road. Now, they did start doing well with the D4 they put back in Nikon, but with the D5, they went back to a Sony sensor. All in all, these Nikon sensors are mainly in the more entry-level cameras, and that's what you've been seeing, but nothing in the high end. The interesting part about all of this is that since last year, Nikon has been buying out Samsung stuff. If you didn't know, Samsung, that yes, the phone manufacturer, actually used to make cameras, and they were pretty good. They just weren't popular. The lenses weren't that good or anything, but they were pushing out 4K video even kind of before Sony was. They were really putting that game out there. They just didn't really have the backing for it, and they pulled out and they discontinued all their stuff. But they had great sensors. They had good autofocusing. It's just they just weren't in. They weren't in trend. They weren't in fashion. Not a lot of people have them. But they had great sensors. So the theory was Nikon was going to be using those sensors. And if this is the case, we're going to see, in my opinion, Samsung sensors in full frame Nikon cameras or more cameras going forward. But like I said, Nikon made some good sensors themselves for some of their cameras. I'd like to see more of it. They just need to do better than what it was, because a lot of these were kind of slow frames per second and everything like that, and they weren't the best for video. But this is it. This is the whole big story. What do you think? And even not just in regards to Nikon. As I said, Sony has been dominating the industry in the sensor market. And what do you think? Is this a big deal? Do you think Sony's kind of stupid for not selling more themselves? But Sony has come a long way in the past few years. This is definitely a big deal in the photography industry. And I think it will really affect Nikon, who's kind of being kicked down as they are right now. I just think Nikon doesn't necessarily know what to do per se. And this is the first time they're like, crap, what do we do? But I would be interested to see the Samsung future. Let me know your thoughts on all this down in the comments below. Great discussion point, if you ask me. Sony, kudos to you. Takes big guts to do it. And I think you're doing it right. I mean, you should keep everything for yourself in regards to that. You might lose out on a little bit of money, but you're selling a lot more cameras now in 2017 coming from 2016. Let me know your thoughts down below.